House Government Operations Committee is called to order for Monday, April 18th, 2022. Clerk, please take the roll.
Representatives Byrd, Calfee, Camper, Cochran, Dixie, Faison, Johnson, Lafferty, Crawford, Littleton, Rudder, Stewart, Warner, Vice Chairman Reedy, Chairman Reagan.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Members, do we have any personal orders or announcements? Seeing none, we'll begin our calendar. First on our agenda is House Bill 2312 by Representative Griffey. Motion. We have a motion and a second. And Representative Griffey, your bill is traveling with an amendment 15123, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
No action is needed in this committee since it's already on the bill. You are recognized for an explanation of your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. What this bill does, the impetus of this was when Commissioner Swin went around trying to get input on funding system and so forth, a school district director indicated the problem is our kids, it's not the problem, it's our kids' reading ability, it's the testing. And so I tried to get a copy of some of the test questions and see what's going on those. And it's very difficult to get a copy of the assessment or reading questions. And to me, I felt like that just kind of impinged the oversight ability of members of the legislature to try to, review and see what's going on in the state of Tennessee. So this bill would allow the Department of Education to provide members of the legislature upon request copies of test questions that aren't going to impinge the integrity of the test, no new future questions, and they'll promulgate rules, but it will allow us to do our oversight job so that we can review these test questions, share them with third-party professionals, get their input on them, or school district directors. And so we can make an assessment, is the problem with our students reading, or is it perhaps maybe there's some issues with some of the test questioning? So that's the impetus of the bill, and I would move for passage, please.
Members, you've heard an explanation of the bill. Do we have questions of the bill's sponsor? Representative Byrd first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this bill because I know the tests are like Fort Knox. You couldn't get into them or anything else, and they won't give you a copy of after the test either. It's really frustrating for teachers and parents not to be able to see the test and be able to see where the kids went wrong and be able to educate them a little bit more on that. But I'm glad you're bringing that. But I fear that they'll just give you the questions that they really want you to have and not the whole test. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sponsor, you have a response to that?
No response.
Next on my list, Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question is, I would have thought the reason they keep this stuff secret is because they're trying to preserve the integrity of future tests. I see I'm looking at your amendment. I see you've got a ban on or a requirement that the testing materials and proposed materials be provided to the member. Then you've got a kind of a clawback for items required by the department to validate future administrations, items being field tested, and so on. Can you talk about the interplay? What have you learned from the department about the interplay between those two? Because it seems like the clawback seems like C effectively deletes A. How does that work?
Mr. Sponsor.
So you're concerned about the exception may swallow the rule. I share your concern somewhat, but I, in good faith, I think that the amendment was from the Department of Education. They're trying to protect the integrity, because if you disclose the questions that are coming up on the test that's in 2 weeks from now, and somebody, legislators, staff members, somebody inadvertently, the test got out, that's going to damage the integrity of the testing and make it unfair for some students who don't have the benefit of that testing. So I think we're just going to have to do the best we can. and adjust if this isn't enough. But I think we need to make some efforts so that members of the General Assembly can do their oversight role. And let's look at these test questions. And I'm going to, if I won't be here, but you all will have the ability to call in third-party professionals, look at the test questions that have been used in the past and say, look, are we really getting a valid measure of our third graders' ability to read? Or some of these questions, is there a problem with the way they're written, presented, and that maybe action is appropriate on the part of the General Assembly to try to address some of these problems with the testing system. If we don't know what's going on with the testing system, members of the General Assembly are unable to take appropriate oversight action, in my opinion.
Follow up, Representative Stewart.
Did the department, when you promulgated your bill, thank you for that answer, it's comprehensive. Did the department, when you put your bill forward, indicate that this was really going to be a problem? It sounds like it's a bill a little bit to solve one issue, like one request. Has there really been a problem in the past of people not being able to get these
Mr. Sponsor.
information as needed?
I don't have the benefit of insight into what's going on in the past. All I can say is I tried to get copies of the test questions. It was extremely difficult. And like Representative Byrd had mentioned, I believe he's tried, and it's very hard to get the questions. And the only questions you will be provided are questions that have been cycled through the system and they're no longer going to use anymore. And so there's still a large body of questions. Some are that are currently in the testing system. Some are test questions that they use to sort of measure, are they getting a good assessment and feedback from the students with these questions? And then some are, stuff they may use in the future. So there's a large body and it gets rather complicated and into the weeds. But if we can't at least see what the testing questioning is and get benefit of input from our school directors and third-party experts, textbook commission. We've got lots of great teachers that know what's going on and how to test students' reading. And if I was going to still be in the legislature, I would certainly want to be able to have them come in, look at this stuff, and get their input on it.
Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is hard to get and to see those questions. That's why one of the problems I have with a lot of this the high stakes testing is that it's not actually used to benefit the child's education. The teacher can't see it. It's real simple when you can look at a test and see what they missed and see the pattern and see why they're missing questions. We're not able to do that. However, teachers and parents actually could benefit greatly from seeing these tests after they're taken. I don't think the legislature or the department are going to be much assistance with this when they're the ones pushing these tests. They sought out these testing companies. We are not experts. Even there's no one in the department, to my knowledge, that's an expert on testing and test questions and reliability and validity. But where we would be helpful to folks is letting the teachers see those and school personnel. But there's literally no one in the legislature with this type of experience and not in the department. So perhaps we should be looking in advance at who we're giving testing contracts to and maybe considering making our own test in Tennessee.
Representative Johnson, I would ask you to withdraw your assertion there's no one an expert. I worked in this field for 15 years. Representative Byrd, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this test only for the reading part, or is this for all grades
Mr.
and
Sponsor.
all tests?
It's my understanding it's for all assessment testing.
Okay. And I just wanted to make a comment too. ACT, if you want to see your test after you finish the ACT, you can now get a copy of that. Whereas these tests that Department of Ed, you can't see them even after they get through the test. So you can't see the questions that you missed or anything. And you would think, as much money as we pay a year for testing, that they could afford to do a brand new test and send those tests back to the schools and let parents and students and teachers review them after, and that's my biggest gripe is they don't do that. Thank you.
Representative Cochran, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quick. I don't want to beat this into the ground, but I will say that I will also hear reports, after students take a TCAP or some year-end assessment, there may be some students who actually say, hey, listen, on number, whatever on the English test, there was no right answer. And there's really no way currently for anyone to review that. And so I just think this would at least give some sort of oversight that if you had numerous students who said, who gave that kind of report that on a particular test, look, we don't think that this was done correctly. I mean, the people who write these tests are not infallible. And so, because as has been mentioned multiple times now, teachers cannot review that, school boards can't review it. This will at least give some sort of oversight if there was a complaint that someone could look at it and say, is there, maybe this question was or was not written correctly. But just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks for the bill.
Response, Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you. I think that the way the bill is written, legislators would be able to share testing material with third-party experts, teachers, and school directors, and get their input into some of the testing procedures and questions. So,
Thank you. Representative Warner, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for positive recommendation.
We have a motion for a positive recommendation and a second. Do we have any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting on sending House Bill 2312 to Calendar and Rules with a positive recommendation. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed, nay. Bill moves out. Ayes have it.
thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Number 2 on our calendar is House Bill 325 by Representative Curcio. We have a motion and a second. Representative Curcio, I show your bill traveling with an amendment. Amendment code 14663. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir. I believe that is correct.
The amendment is on the bill. We don't have to take action in this committee. You are cleared to explain your bill, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman and committee. Members, we have the Electronic Monitoring Indigency Fund right now, what's known as the EMIF. And since I've entered the General Assembly, we have rewritten or restructured this fund, I think, 3 different times. Unfortunately, we still have not gotten it right. So what's happening right now, just to give you a brief synopsis, is you have ignition interlock, which is the kind of legacy technology where if someone has a DUI, you're probably familiar with this, where they have to blow into this device, and that will prevent their car from starting if they've been drinking. If they've not been drinking, then the car starts. Then separately from that, you have other forms of criminal monitoring, like transdermal devices, GPS monitoring devices, any number of other devices. These are being adopted at various rates across the state, kind of depending on the jurisdiction, depending on how comfortable the judge is with those technologies. And so the way we fund that now for indigent defendants is ignition interlock gets first dibs on the money, if you will. And then whatever is left over flows over into the EMIF fund that funds all other forms of technology. It's a bad way to do it because you have an unspecified number of claims for an unknowable amount of money. So what happens oftentimes is mid-year, the fund runs out of money. And every year in the governor's budget, the governor has to fund this or kind of pad this fund with dollars to make sure that it doesn't run out of money or try to ensure that it doesn't run out of money. So I've been working with the administration for the last 3 years now to try to get an admin bill to sort of rectify this once and for all, to separate the 2 funds and to kind of make them both stand alone and whole on their own. We've not been able to come to an agreement on that. So what this bill does, and working in consultation with the department or the administration, creates the Electronic Monitoring Indigency Task Force. And inside the bill, it indicates who will serve on that task force. They'll meet as soon as June 15th of this year and come back to the General Assembly with recommendations by September of this year, so that hopefully we can get this thing fixed, in the next legislative session once and for all. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members, you've heard an explanation of the bill. Representative Stewart, you're recognized.
So the only thing this bill does as amended is it creates a task force.
Mr. Sponsor,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
follow up. Representative Stewart. Any
That's
other?
all.
Yes, thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. My question is, you said we're coming up short every year when it comes to these types of monitoring. We're are we not charging enough the ones committing the offenses? I mean, can you tell us a little bit how this is funded, or is it coming from the penalties when these people are called, or how that works, please?
Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. It's a mixture right now because the fund is merged. So you've got Ignition Interlock, which is funded through fines and penalties, and then the indigency portion that funds other types of electronic monitoring is really fed through a direct appropriation. And so since Ignition Interlock gets dibs on the dollars first, which I think there's a good public policy reason for that. I'm certainly not throwing rocks at that, but we don't know how many folks are going to make claims. So we've had in years past, we've had vendors who performed work for the state because they followed a judge's order. The judge said, hey, you need to put this GPS monitor on this defendant. They're indigent. The fund is going to pay you. They perform that work, and then they invoice the state in arrears only to get a notice back from the Treasury Department saying, sorry, that fund ran out of money 2 months ago and we're not able to pay you. So to try to curb that, again, the governor's been putting money into this system. But I think with just getting all the players at the table together, I think we can come up with a much better way to do this. And we got really close last year. Really, the only issue was where this was going to be housed. So we're looking at the Office of OCJP, which does a lot of pass-through federal grant funding and that sort of thing. It didn't seem to be the exact right home for this. But I think we're about 90% there on a structure that would be beneficial to all concerned. But we just ultimately couldn't get there. And so I asked the administration, I said, okay, how are we going to ensure that this gets done? Because it's a problem that we've been dealing with now for the better part of a decade. And the idea of this task force came up to sort of force our hand to say, okay, we've all got to sit down. We've got to come to the table. And then next year, let's run a bill to fix it.
Follow up. Seeing no other questions of our sponsor, the chair will entertain a motion for a positive recommendation. Okay, I'm sorry. I've been informed we have a motion and a second on that already. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting on sending House Bill 325 to Finance, Ways and Means. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Bill moves out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of Committee.
Item number 3, House Bill 1927 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 4, House Bill 2022 by Chair Lady Littleton. We have a motion and a second. Chair Lady Littleton, I show your bill traveling with an amendment. I show 14980 as the amendment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The amendment is on the bill. No action is needed in this committee. You are clear to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2022, as amended, requires a case manager in the Department of Children's Services to report a suspected violation of a known court order to the law enforcement if the case manager observes the person against whom the court ordered has been entered acted in violation of the court order, and the department currently has an open case on the family that is subject to the court order.
Members, you've heard an explanation of the bill by the sponsor. Do we have questions of the sponsor? You're recognized, Vice Chair Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chair Lady Littleton, what's the genesis of this bill? Where did it come from? I know you're steeped in this conversation everywhere you go across the state, but I'm curious.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It came from the Second Look Commission. I'll tell you what that is. Can I
You're
read this,
recognized.
please? Thank you. This bill arrived from a year-long finding from the Second Look Commission, a department of the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. The commission was created in response to the need to review and improve how the state handles severe child abuse cases. We meet along with the child counselors, judges, law enforcement, and DCS workers, and many others each month, and do a deep dive investigation of these specially chosen cases. The bill I bring today is a result of some issues and roadblocks we found that have resulted in legislation that will help the Department of Children's Services and Commission on Children and Youth to do their job and protect severely abused children. So there was one case, there's several cases, but this one case is, there's always something that really sticks in your mind. But this little boy had accused a man of sexually abusing him, and he was young, about 3 years old. And the caseworker came back in, and the man was sitting on the sofa beside him. And not only that, someone had tattooed a cross on that little boy's foot. So that's where this come from. There was a court order against him. He was not supposed to be in the home, and he was sitting on the sofa beside the little boy that he was accused of abusing.
Follow up? Any further questions of our sponsor? Seeing none, we're voting on sending House Bill 2022. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Johnson, I'm sorry. You recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I absolutely want to support this bill. It is important. My one concern, of course, is that we're adding more things on to the DCS caseworkers where they're already leaving in droves because they just can't keep up with the load they have. So I just need to get on the record that I'm very concerned about adding to that load when we're 20 to 25% short workers. But this is absolutely a good addition, and I will be supporting it.
Again, my apologies for overlooking you there. Any other questions? Sponsor, you recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I realize that the caseworkers, there's a large load on them, and we are trying to hire more people. It's hard to find people that want to do this kind of work for sure. But this would be one phone call to law enforcement to inform them that someone is in that household that there is a court order against. Thank you.
Other questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, we are voting on sending House Bill 2022 to calendar and rules. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Bill moves out to calendar and rules. Members, the next bill on the agenda is mine. I'll turn the gavel over to Vice Chair Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 5 on the calendar, House Bill 1827 by Chairman Reagan. Do I get a motion? Got a motion and a second on the bill. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is the rule omnibus bill that we pass every year. It makes all makes permanent all the rules that were filed with the Secretary of State in 2021 that did not receive a negative recommendation in the Joint Rule Review Committee. Only 2 rules received negative recommendations from the Joint Rule Review. Therefore, they will not remain in effect. The preamble of a UT Knoxville rule relative to Student Code of Conduct and one portion of an Austin P rule relative to Title IX compliance. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will entertain any questions.
Any questions for Chairman Reagan at this time? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All in favor of moving House Bill 1827 onto calendar rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, nay. Bill moves out. Chairman Reagan, the meeting is yours, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair Reedy. Members, as a reminder, we do have one bill that was rolled to next meeting. So we will be hearing House Bill 1927 on the next meeting. Do we have any other business to come before the committee? Okay. Seeing no other business, we will close with an announcement. The Joint Rule Review Committee will be meeting on the 24th of April. I'm sorry, 25th. Is that right? Okay, 25th. Yes, at 1 o'clock, 1300. If there are no other items of business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.